No. I mean, I'm not a party girl. I'm a party agnostic. But I can't see any significant shifts occurring so long as Labour is terrified about the middle ground, and the middle ground remains desperate that things don't change and that it's all going to be all right. And that's what I meant about political will being crucial. It involves taking risks, and political parties don't take risks until the climate around them has changed. And I would be really worried if there was a crisis how a Labour-led government would actually respond to that. I don't have confidence that it would be a progressive response. And I think the experiences that we've had, even in the TPPA debate, there has now been some movement, and I think it's been led from Andrew. And I think that there are still some really big issues that you guys in the Labour Party need to confront.
Well, I won't comment about that on this occasion. Would you like to?
Yeah, I just feel there is another way that communities can grapple with a financial crisis, and that is if they start cooperatives. In Emilia-Romagna and Italy, they fared much better than other places because they had lots of cooperatives and people were paid a decent wage and money went back into the company instead of to shareholders. Is that a way something we could do here too?
For that, and if you look at, there's a table in there that talks about the distribution across the finance sector, and even Kiwibank just broke through the 5% threshold. The dominance of the banks is enormous, and the more locked in people are to the banks through their mortgages and through other forms of debt, the more difficult it is, in fact, to break out and do something different. And you have to take a risk with a cooperative. People, ironically, feel quite safe with the big banks, even though you think they rort you. Would you put your money in the local cooperative, or would you put it in the BNZ? And I think there's not that culture of confidence around those alternatives. And there may be those initiatives that develop, but I think they will remain very small for a long time. And we're not seeing even the iwi starting to take, most of the iwi funds are being run by the funds managers from the big financial institutions, as opposed to developing alternative banking structures. So I think that's a really tough one that again requires some creative thinking.
There's a last question of the common the last one. That's last, and then we'll go wide back.
Do you think anyone is doing it right? Are there any actors on the international stage?
I think there's lots of interesting ideas starting to develop now. But a lot of what we've had in the last, especially since the GFC, has been critique and where to look to for answers, or look to for alternative thinking, and bits of experimentation are emerging. One of the most interesting, I think, is in the revival of capital controls, to try to stop the flows of speculative, destabilising money. And there are various different kinds of capital controls that are being used in different places, and there's some quite good work being done about which ones of those are working better under what conditions. And so I think there are embryonic but concrete examples. One of the ones that I'm about to start working on is a number of countries are now withdrawing from investment agreements because